Excellent. Hello. Now we're just waiting for everyone to join in, to set up their mics, to set up their phones, their gear. As I know, some of us have professional microphones ready just in cases like these. So that's gonna be fun. And yeah, first of all, welcome everyone to our Twitter Spaces Investing with Friends. These types of spaces won't be strictly professional, since everything like that it sometimes turns a bit boring. So we're gonna keep them a bit casual. We're gonna have some fun. Our guests today are our friends from Deep DAO that will be joining us. But before we actually start, we have some interesting topics that we're going to cover before we go into the DAOs and the deep dive into the state of DAOs, how DAOs operate, and what makes them tick behind the, let's say, closed doors. Today with us is Maki, your host. We have Marco as a co-host from Satoshi account, Alex, our co-founder, and Martin, our, again, co-founder. So hello guys and welcome.
Hello there, Maki. How are you today?
Doing well. Alex, let's hear you a bit, and then Martin, just so we have the green light for the launch that everything's operational.
Hey, can you hear me?
Everything sounds great. Martin, you with us?
GM.
Excellent. Everything's operational. Now, since now I'm the host, first time I have the main power of muting everyone, muting my bosses. So we'll see if if I will be able to use it later on. JK, of course. Yeah, before we start, we have some interesting chit chat topics that we're gonna pick your brains, Alex and Martin, to see what you guys are thinking about. And how do you see the entire space developing further on? Since I'm such an excellent host, I'm gonna allow you guys to pick the first topic that we kind of gathered around and see what do you think. What do you think is the most interesting topic out of all? So hear them out. We have a topic about Metaverse. Actually, Ready Player One. If you've seen the movie. And do you think that will be the end goal of the Metaverse, and how people will actually adapt to that type of ecosystem and maybe the lifestyle? Then we have earn to play model, the blockchain games, and kind of how does that work? Are those games actually fun, or are you just grinding to stack your tokens and earn some cash? Does that model actually work? What are the biggest misconceptions you hear from people in your day-to-day lives that are not a part of Web3 or blockchain industries? What do you think that thing needs to be changed for people to understand the blockchain? And the last one is crypto a currency of the future, and maybe even in space, who knows? So Alex, Martin, what is the #1 topic that you want to talk today until our guests join? Alex, what do you think? What topic would you like to talk about?
I mean, we can definitely talk about Metaverse because that's where a lot of things are happening, obviously, and a lot of money are getting poured into all these kind of projects, and also like there are a lot of DAOs forming around metaverses. So.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's start then with that one, and then Martin will be able to pick the next topic. So my question is, the Metaverse, we are seeing a lot of projects happening around that. We do not have the, how do we call it, the one and the only. And if it goes mainstream, we'll have it later on. But how do you see all of these projects kind of evolving, bringing some additional value? Do you think that there will be at the end the best Metaverse, the #1 Metaverse? And I'm gonna go back again to that Ready Player One movie. That's just something I dream about. But on the other hand, I fear I fear that that might become our reality. Alex, what do you think about that? Have you seen the movie, and how do you see that developing in the future?
Well, yeah, I've seen the movie, of course. It's a big part of the culture, I guess. But when it comes to like a current state, at least, of the metaverse and the blockchain gaming in general, it's not like we are not there yet. It's also that I guess a lot of game development in this area is actually under a lot of burden from, like, necessity of having the token and relying on the token, right? So what's been like initially an idea that you can kind of empower your players, you can give them ownership over the in-game assets and so on, turned out to be a little bit different, and actually, like, becoming more of a token distribution mechanism, right, rather than actual, like, ownership over something, right? Because I mean, I've been a little bit skeptical about this whole concept from the very beginning, because I've been working in game development before and haven't really seen among the players, at least the one that I communicated with, a need to have like ownership over that one sword or whatever, like provable ownership, right? You have it, you use it, that's it. What it could potentially be was, from my perspective again, a way to kind of overcome the whole black market, especially in MMORPGs, because that thing exists anyway, right? And having it under control of sorts would be more beneficial potentially, so you can kind of unlock this economy and allow people to, like, trade freely outside even the game itself and so on. But the ultimate goal that a lot of people put ahead of themselves in this space was, like, interoperability of games potentially at some point. The problem is, what do you mean by interoperability, and how do you actually achieve that? Because it's not just something that is problematic in terms of ownership itself, but also compatibility of game assets, visual ones, economical aspects of it, and even gameplay aspects of it. So it turned out that it's actually nearly impossible, right? So the majority of promises, at least that we had in the early days, and early days are like a year and a half ago, in terms of, like, Web3 gaming, they basically didn't really work out, as we can see now, right? So all the giants of the first cycle basically are not in the best condition right now. And I guess there are many reasons for that, in addition to the ones that I named. So when it comes to, like, further development, again, in many aspects, Metaverse is a game with just ideally a heavy social aspect to it. And again, it's not something new, right? That's something we had for decades now. There are games out there that are doing exactly that, starting with, like, Second Life as the most well-known example. And they do have their fair share of the audience. Also, the thing is that they rely quite heavily on user-generated content, and again, the social component. So it's really hard to compete in this space, right? That's why we don't have too many of those games that are successful, right? Like, have basically, I know, Roblox. Probably you can also, put Minecraft into that basket, but other than that, you don't have really that many successful projects. So, and a lot of people also try to point in the direction of VR and this whole, like, experience of living in the metaverse, which again is something here you are just putting additional constraint on top of the existing ones, right? So you have, like, all those economical gameplay and whatnot, but also, like, you're in VR, which is not really that consumer ready as a product yet, right? It's still, like, years away from being something that you can really use and enjoy at all times. It can be a really cumbersome thing right now. So I think we don't really know yet how the metaverse will look like and what will be the, like, you know, all the benefits of it. The whole COVID pandemic obviously speeded up the whole thing in terms of, like, you know, some organizations moving to Metaverse in this or other way, but basically just in order to provide access to their services to people from their homes with having an interface that is more potentially friendly, right, and more reminding of real world in a way, right? So it's like, you know, building a virtual world so people just feel comfortable, and it's more like a user experience question from this perspective rather than economical or Plato or something like that. So yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, we are limited by the technology of this time, and we can never know what the future will bring, but definitely it's worth keeping an eye on. Martin, would you like to share your thoughts regarding the metaverse and how you see it developing?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, actually, my take on metaverse is completely different, and it's more related to what Alex pointed in the last part of his kind of thoughts. Is for me, metaverse still does not exist in the, let's say, the final version that I am, you know, I believe that it should look like, you know. For me, you know, the current, like, I don't want to kind of point out fingers to someone, but current metaverses, right, that people call the metaverses, are not any much different from just a role play game like a World of Warcraft or, you know, just a Minecraft, which has some blockchain on top, right? It doesn't make any sense for me. I understand the ownership perspective of that you can kind of physically own, let's say, the assets, right? Like your skins or your whatever in-game items or in metaverse items, which makes total sense. But for me, metaverse, when I hear metaverse, I imagine, you know, VR, AR, and I imagine that you are part of you're like an asset inside, you know, you're part of this. You're not just walking around with a player with a joystick or with your keyboard. You are basically fully involved, and you should be able to do everything, right? Maybe only physical, like how we call this, physiological needs, like going to the toilet and you have to eat and drink water. Those are the three things that maybe no one can solve, right, in the metaverse. But everything else you should be able to do there, right? And this is what I call a metaverse, and it doesn't exist at this point. And I believe this is the end goal of it, where everyone will just stay home and be part of some, you know, meta world, which is like a parallel world, like a second life or whatever, right? Where you can choose, like, who you want to be there. You have a second choice of, you know, being someone else in this world, to look in the way that you want to look, right? And actually engage with the content that you want to engage, not in like in real life. You go out and, I mean, someone can rob you or punch you in the face. That is not possible in the metaverse, right? Or if someone talks shit about you, you can just ban him, right? Or whatever. And a lot of people would prefer this, honestly, over the real life, because real life, it's becoming harder, you know, tougher and tougher, obviously, especially in many kind of, let's say, third world countries, right? Which again, they would not be able to be part of the metaverse, essentially, but you know what I'm saying. And in general, I don't still get the concept and why people are going crazy, and we clearly see there is no user-based yet in this space for current metaverses. Like at the peak, Sandbox had 7,000 players. I mean, that's just funny. 7,000 people only. It's not like 7 million or 70 million. So you can, put this in perspective, and you're going to see that this is literally scratching the surface, and it's not even 0.01% of what it should look like. So at this point, we're so early and so behind. That's why our concept of and understanding about Metaverse changed a lot, because we lower our expectations by a lot in the last few years. But yeah, I guess it's due to technical limitations, and maybe people are not mature enough, let's say, right? We still have, the boomers, millennials, maybe Generation Z now, Gen Z, it's kind of understanding a bit more Metaverse, but I think we need another few generations to pass before that really happens in kind of at the full extent.
Yeah, thank you guys for sharing your thoughts. Couldn't agree more. I always like to hear a debate and different types of opinions. We covered just one topic, so we'll save the rest for the next space call, since all of those are quite interesting. And in the meantime, we have our guest joining in, Aman from Deep DAO. Hello, Aman, and please say hello to our audience and feel free to introduce yourself.
Hey man, hello. How's my audio before I start?
Amazing, yes.
Thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Aman. I do product at Deep DAO. Really happy to be here. It's awesome that you guys are hosting this space and invited us. So thank you, both from my personal side as well as Deep DAO's end. So it feels great to be here.
Thank you for joining us, and we are super happy to have you here.
Awesome.
So yeah, before you joined, we just had a small chit chat. Actually, not as small. We went into the depth of Metaverse. I hope you heard some of it. But again, if you want to comment on something, please feel free to, since everyone has their own opinion regarding that. But if not, we are ready to start.
Yeah, well, I think it's a dreamland, right? Like we're commenting or dreaming. It's basically our expectations about something that is not even there, right? It's like we are thinking about the internet in like 90s or something like that. So I don't know how much of that makes sense, rather than just being dreams and our expectations and what we would like it to be. But yeah, I guess it is better to do that another time rather than now.
Yeah, we don't know what the future will bring, but definitely once the technology improves, we will see some amazing things coming in. And yeah, let's then start with our main agenda, the deep dive into the state of DAOs. And luckily with us, the experts, and Aman from Deep DAO. Aman, please tell us what Deep DAO is, and then we're going to go on those fancy questions, just for our audience to understand a bit more what you guys do and how amazing you are.
Thank you for that, man. Thank you for that question, because like you said, I can give a better introduction to what Deep DAO is, in case anybody here is not that familiar. So if I were to put it in one line, Deep DAO is essentially an explorer or a discovery engine for the DAO ecosystem. That's what it is. But what does that mean? I think that is a tricky question, because whenever people ask me like to explain it further, I always have to give different answers depending on who is asking. Right? For example, if you are a tool, something like a payroll tool or something, that does not have a lot of information about people once they log in. Or say you are a DAO operations management tool, where it is very important for you to have information about a person. I'm not talking about personal information, but stuff like, which are the communities that he's a part of, how active is he in all these communities, what has his last 2 years in the ecosystem looked like, stuff like that. So if you are a tool like that, and I'm introducing Deep DAO to you, then I am possibly talking about all the data that we have about people and our API and stuff like that. And if you are a researcher, somebody in the academic sphere, like studying DAOs and this grand experiment that we are running, then like I possibly have to talk about all the power and governance and coalitions and how we track all of that. But when somebody asks me to explain about Deep DAO in Twitter Spaces, it's kind of confusing because I'm not sure who's at the other end listening, right? But nevertheless, I'll try to be as general as possible. Like I said, it is an explorer or a discovery engine for the DAO ecosystem. And broadly speaking, to me, a good explorer for the DAO ecosystem should look at 3 things. The first is, obviously, it should have a lot of information about the DAOs itself, right? Right from, what are these organizations, what are they doing, what kind of treasuries do they have, how is it operated, and like who are the people there, etc., and all that. Secondly, since these are social organizations managed by people like you and me, there should be some sort of information about people, right? Who are these people? How influential are they? Which communities are they a part of, etc. And thirdly, there is a very important layer of tooling or infrastructure that makes all of this possible and which all of this runs on, right? So we need to have a good list of that too. So Deep DAO is basically all of this 3 together. If you come to Deep DAO, we cover, you can find a lot of information about a lot of DAOs. We list around 5,000 DAOs across 3 different ecosystems. This is a number that you may hear like a couple of more times in this space, and I'm sorry about that. But yes, we have a lot of DAOs, and you can find a lot of information about DAOs if you come to Deep DAO. You can find stuff like how much do they hold in their treasury, how many treasury addresses do they have, how much of this is liquid and vested, and you can go a level deeper and then understand about how this treasury is managed. Like, what is the governance activity there look like? How many votes are being done? What's the success ratio? Who are the people voting? Which are the most influential groups in each DAO? And it even stretches to places like coalitions, where you can look at an organizations and say that these 10 different addresses, they possess a certain amount of voting power, and they are the core group of people in a DAO. So from an organization perspective, it starts all the way from treasuries, like right down to very interesting stuff like coalitions. And then we also explore the people side. We have information or DAO profiles of nearly 4 million people. So if you come to Deep DAO right now, you can put your wallet address, Ethereum wallet address, in the search bar and basically search for your profile. You should do this if you haven't done it already. And it basically will open up your profile and it would show you information like which DAOs are you a part of, which are the proposals and votes that you have done, what kind of governance tokens do you hold, who are the people who are similar to you in terms of activity or token holdings and stuff like that. And when I look at this, I think of it as a better iteration of LinkedIn in some ways, because if you look at LinkedIn, people can add anything, right? They can add stuff like, I was a CEO of Google for the past 5 years, and there's no verification system for any of this, right? But for many of the things that you see in a person's DAO profile, stuff like, I was the head of this working group, or I contributed to this particular wing in this particular DAO. Most of these actions are vouched by other community members in terms of votings and stuff like that, right? And funnily enough, Eyal, our founder, if you look him up on Deep DAO, you'd be able to actually see one of the earliest proposals that he made. It was in early 2020s. It was in one of those early DAOs. I think it was Genesis DAO or something, from which he got some play money to build the proof of concept of what Deep DAO is right now. So you look it up and you can see all these amazing things that like this person has done like 3 years back and all that. So it's amazing. So we have a lot of information about people. And thirdly, we also have an awesome list of tools. These are basically DAO tools, which are primarily or mainly used by DAOs, and of which Unique.vc is also a part of. So this is what we are. I hope that's a good enough introduction.
Thank you so much for that deep introduction into what Deep DAO does. And I'm sure Deep DAO is the #1 page for many people when it comes to information to DAOs. So if you're in the DAO space, you've definitely been there and done that. And you have to just know about it, especially our co-founders and you yourself, experts in the DAO space, which kind of leads us to our next question. Let's go with what led to the creation of DAOs. And as you just mentioned, Aman, a lot of people joining in together, the founder of Deep DAO voting on some of the first proposals on chain and kind of blockchain. It doesn't lie. And how do you see not only the historical part of how the DAOs were made, but what actually led towards that and what made people create something like DAO? And since Aman, you're our first guest here, you're our guest here. So let's hear it from you first. What do you think and how do you see it?
Is there a philosophical question?
It can be. It's always good, you know. we want to keep this space fun. So let's hear how your brain works. Let's pick it.
Sure. The reason I think I asked that is I think it can also be answered philosophically, because if you consider people, people have always had the ambition to decentralize things. So the decentralization movement, according to me, has existed forever. Whenever you consider a group of people protesting or proposing a change or forming some form of group for some sort of right to be established, you always hear values like we need equal voice for everyone, we need to make everyone's voices heard and stuff like that, right? And these are essentially DAO values, right? That's the kind of stuff that we are going after. So in philosophy, I don't think the DAO movement is a new thing, and in spirit also I don't think it is a new thing. But what is new? Like what happened in the last couple of years that did not happen like forever in the history of humanity, right? I think what happened with all those movements which had the same decentralization spirit was that finally the power ultimately distilled into the hands of a very few people. Even though we started with the values like we want equal voices for everyone, ultimately it happened that a few people or a select group of people always held the power. And I don't agree that it is simply because those people leading those movements were corrupted. That's why it happened like that. And because you see, if you look at history, there was a time when a lot of philosophers and proto-scientists believed that we could purify base metals like lead and make it into gold, right? This is called alchemy. So they had big laboratories and whole procedures and tried to do this for centuries. But now, if you ask me or anybody else, we know that it is theoretically possible, but practically it is not possible. Because to convert something like lead into gold, you have to transmit it this using a nuclear reactor, and it would cost, I don't know, like 1 million times more than it costs to mine gold, right? So what has changed between when people wanted to be alchemists and where we are right now? Has our ambition to convert every metal into gold changed? I don't think so. Like, given an opportunity, I think people would still like to do it. The thing is that right now we have a different set of tools. We have a different level of understanding about how things work. And we have techniques to understand the composition and viability of a process and everything. So according to me, when I look at the decentralization movement also through the same lens, I feel that many of those efforts were searches in the dark, right? Because when you say that everybody needs equal voice and everybody's voice needs to be heard, there also needs to be tools through which you can ensure that everybody's voice will be heard and everybody will have equal voice. Without that, the ideal just would not work, right? So what essentially changed in the past 5 years or from the advent of Bitcoin is that we got a set of super tools, right? We got blockchain, we got smart contracts, we got the DAO principles, and suddenly things look a lot different. So that's what essentially changed. So what led to the creation of DAOs? I think it's the same spirit which we have always had, but suddenly we discovered new sets of tools and we had DAOs. So yeah, that's what essentially happened. And like right now, when we talk about DAOs, we say that they manage $10 billion, and there are like, I don't know, 4 million people in all of these DAOs. And sometimes I wonder if we've got so used to the idea of a DAO existing or people participating in DAOs that we forget to stop for a moment and then think that, how are we even doing all this? There needs to be a sense of appreciation of what we have accomplished, right? Because this has never been done in the history of humanity, right? For us to have good decision making and people participating in governance, we need to have had voting stations installed. We need to have had some sort of physical checks to make sure that people did not commit fraud, right? We need to have had some identities which were physical to make sure that people actually had voting power, right? But right now we can do it just like on chain using code right from your phone, and a bunch of internet strangers who may not have even seen each other, who are sitting in different corners of the world, can manage billions of dollars of treasury. And I think that's amazing. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much for kind of sharing how you see it and how you see the space going, and how actually people all around the world are trying to achieve something and kind of push it on to the next step. Now, Alex, let's hear it from you. How do you see that DAOs were created from the core? You can also go into the philosophical thing as Aman. We would be more than happy to hear it.
Yeah, well, for me, really DAOs are a very natural thing in a way, because we as humans, we are very social, right? So we need this. We have a need to have a group around us, right? And with blockchain, just a little different, a little simpler, and a little bit more experimental as well, because you kind of have this pseudonymous environment where you can try to achieve something despite, like, your previous achievements in the real world, right? You are building your new identity, and that's kind of related to the metaverse thing, right? And so you can contribute to most exciting things and prove yourself, and become more and more influential and important over time, just by by the very fact that you are in this industry, in this space. And that's basically why I believe DAOs are a very natural development. For that, and it's super exciting to see in general, how people are also trying to rediscover different methods of governing and managing those organizations, because that's something that has a long history in terms of how it existed in human history in the first place. Over thousands of years, we had different types of communities and companies and organizations and whatnot. Now we're trying to see how this can be improved with the blockchain, where we have certain additional transparency over taking decisions, but also more freedom in taking decisions, again, because anybody can participate in that, given the conditions are right. So again, for me, it's kind of what's really necessary, for me at least, is to make sure that we also transfer the existing experience of humanity in terms of creating organizations on chain, right? So because many things don't really need reinventing, right? Some things are just like hot water that just work, but by trying them in new combinations on blockchain, we might arrive to different results, right? So that's where I also kind of see our mission, let's say, in a way.
Thank you, Alex, for sharing your thoughts. And Martin, how do you see it? I'm sure you have also an insight on why the DAOs were created and what led to them.
That's a very interesting question. I think, as far as I know, the first DAO was basically, it's called the DAO. From what I know, I'm not very sure. If I'm not talking now, just misinforming people, but it was originally created with the idea when Ethereum actually kind of origin, and the idea of that was to crowdfund from people and to have truly decentralized. Obviously, Ethereum was allowing back then for that to write smart contract, to be fully decentralized organization where those people take decisions on what to do with the money and kind of do like a big fund, right? Decentralized, autonomous organization running millions of dollars, if not billions. And if you guys remember, actually that led to a hack, which led to Ethereum to fork. And to prove that it's not that decentralized, and basically this is now Ethereum Classic, and then we got the second version of Ethereum, which is the one that we know now. So this is how it started. That was the first DAO ever, and the concept of it is basically getting people together to invest and then manage that investment, right? Which then somehow during the years that changed a lot. And I shared the other day a very kind of for me inspiring tweet. People don't like to be used, but they like to be useful. And I think this is the core thing, like the core value of current DAOs is like people want to be part of something, and they share, this something with other people. It could be like a tribe, or just a community, right? This is just the next version of this Facebook group where you joined about being Mercedes fan, right? Where you just join there to chat and share your thoughts, right? Now DAOs are bringing the next level of these organizations where they can make decisions. There is something, there is goal, right? Not every DAO out there has a goal, right? But this is what drives people. Is it whether to buy a franchise for like Wendy's or a NBA a basketball team, or just to run this protocol like Compound? There should be a goal. Like there are many, and from there you got many types of DAOs, like collector DAO, philanthropy DAO. Like this is a good example of something that did not exist. For example, Ukraine DAO, which it was origin like in beginning of the war, right, between Russia and Ukraine, where out of nowhere, in next day there was a DAO, and then people put money together to support this cause, right? So this is what I'm talking about. Like there is an end goal, and people who recognize themselves in this cause, they join this DAO, right, for some reason. If you're a collector, maybe you want to join Pleaser DAO, and there's so many types of DAOs. There's working DAO. If you're like a freelancer, you join whatever DAO to actually make money, or investment DAO if you want to invest. So you need to first recognize yourself on what community you want to choose, like to be part of what, like what's the end goal, and then take it from there. but I think the concept, it's cool as long as people really understand, because people think that DAO is pretty generic thing, like where you go and vote. No, it's not that. And Alex told me something very interesting a year ago, that it's been proved, and this is one of the biggest basically problems for current DAOs, is the engagement, where basically even if you join in this DAO and you kind of you wanted to be part of it, right? It sounds very appealing to you. I want to be part of whatever DAO, right? Because X, Y, and Z. And you enter this community, after a short period of time, you become inactive. So only about 10% of the people in each DAO are actively engaging, 1% of them being super engaged and kind of leaders, 9% in the board, let's say, and the rest, 90%, not even voting, anymore after third time, right? Or even the second time. So this is, I think, a big challenge, but yeah, the DAOs just they were created around common goal, right? Just a bunch of people with common goal, with something driving them to fulfill this. Because as individual, it might not be possible to do that goal, but as group of people, you'll be able, right? Everyone knows, how powerful the teamwork is, and team, and in general, group of people. So yeah, this is how I see it.
Yeah, thank you, Martin, so much for your opinion. And since we're gonna stick with you, since you already started to move on to maybe one of our next topics, is the DAO ecosystem overall in its current state. And as you mentioned the first DAO being created, and kind of what you can do today with all of these types of DAOs, where you can get involved for multiple different reasons, same as people joining together and helping those in need. And kind of that's the current state that we are at right now. What do you think about that, Martin? And what do you think will happen in the future as new technologies arrive and DAOs actually evolve to something even bigger? How do you see it?
Yeah, that's a good question, and maybe you don't expect this answer. What I was just going to actually try to say now. I think, for example, the current DAOs and how DAOs got popular recently, let's say, it was with the DeFi summer, right? Because some of these protocols, they started kind of to operate like DAOs for one simple reason, and that's compliance, because what they are doing is illegal, and they try to distribute kind of the decisions, not to centralized organization and be a company, but rather that throw the hot potato to everyone and be like, oh, we're distributing the decisions, we're not a company, it's a community driven project, right? So then no one can basically do anything about it, right? So this is one of the core reasons of why protocol DAOs operate, not all of them again. And from this perspective, I believe the next, before I get to this point, the next big trend is basically the kind of NFT DAOs, right, where you have NFT gated access to a DAO, and that gives utility to this NFT. It functions pretty much like the protocol DAO, where people take decision for this collection, but in smaller magnitude, and it's actually they're not doing shady stuff. They're just a bunch of cool people trying to make it, right? Trying to pump the collection and flip their backs. And from that perspective, I think what we need really the DAOs to thrive, it's regulations and to have a very clear setup on what you can do, what you cannot do, and how to do it. And this would be ideal scenario, and kind of we can see then adoption of, let's say, if we want to run Unique as a DAO, you know, our company as a DAO, what do we need to have? Because right now, what you can do, like pass KYC, open, let's say, DAO LLC or whatever, and bank account. But then how we distribute the, let's say, the not the power, but the came out of my mind now. The if something wrong happened, so whose fault it is? If we have in the DAO 10,000 people, right? Decentralization does not work from this perspective, where real life and like countries, big entities, banks, they want to keep someone in charge and the court, right? So that's very controversial. And before that really happened and there are clear regulations, we're not going to see the DAOs taking over the world, basically. Like Aman said, you know, how do you bring the DAO kind of to real life? Like, how do people vote? I mean, is that on-chain voting enough with your wallet? What if someone, you know, just hack your wallet, or, you know, take your ledger or whatever? It's not like you have your ID and you show it to the commission and they write it down in the book, and then again that can be again faked. But off-chain DAOs, we see that you know, on-chain DAOs are still not being efficient, having whales or maybe distributing tokens to many wallets. So again, to influence something, you know, everything is being again trying to be compromised and faked, and kind of everyone is trying to cheat the system always. So from this perspective, it's very, very hard. That's why I would love to see regulations coming into the space in general as soon as possible. We need them badly before we move forward, because right now we're stuck. In reality, we don't have any more than, I don't know, 300, 400,000 users using this decentralized applications in the entire world, right? So millions people are going to centralized exchanges, to Coinbase, Binance, whatever, for one simple reason, because those stuff are regulated, more or less, right? And this is just the nature of people. So we need to see regulations before DAOs take over. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Martin, so much for sharing that. And let's go with Aman, since Aman, I'm sure you have some insight into the DAO system overall right now at this moment, and maybe some indications of the trends that are kind of growing and maybe adapting more and more into the future. Since, of course, Deep DAO knows it all, has a lot of information, would you care to share your opinion regarding that? How do you see DAOs right now, the overall ecosystem? What do you see as maybe the most powerful thing right now? And what do you see in the future, kind of in the near future? Let's call it like that.
Of course, that's a big question. But before I answer that, I just want to touch upon like two things Martin said, because I find them very interesting. And he put out a really interesting perspective of first the low participation issue, right? He said that, and it is true, that DAOs have a participation issue. DAOs also have a retention issue, right? So if you go to Deep DAO right now, and if you look at any of the big DAOs, like say, which has over $1 million in their treasury, you'd see that you'd only find a handful of DAOs which has active members which are more than 1% of the total token holders. So out of the potential people who can vote, only 1 in 100 is actually participating in voting. And the active core would actually be, it would be like 50 to 100 people in most organizations. It would not be even like 0.1% of if you're talking big organizations. So DAOs do have a low participation when you look at in the name of percentages. But I want you guys to look at it from an other angle, right? When we say low, what is our point of reference? Like, is it just numbers, or are we comparing it with present organizational or governance structures? Let's take something like a democracy. Say, like in most democracies, people go and do one vote every 5 years, right? Or in some places, it's even once in every 6 years. And then it is left to like a group of 100 people or say 200 people to make decisions for the whole 5 years. And even in them, there are strong groups which has a few leaders. So ultimately, these countries which have millions of people or sometimes even billions, the decision making over a span of 5 years is done by a handful of people. Whereas you compare it with DAOs, and you say, okay, there is this DAO which has 100,000 token holders, and 1,000 people on this DAO are actually voting on a weekly basis. In some DAOs, there are like dozens of proposals in a week. That's like multiple proposals every day, right? So there are like this 100 or thousands of people who actually care about this DAO and want to engage in decision making on a daily basis. So when you look at it like that, when you compare it with the existing structures that we have for human coordination or making decisions, I don't think it is low. I think it is high. But I do totally agree with Martin. Like there is a problem that needs to be addressed, both in terms of retention as well as participation, that DAOs need to solve, obviously. And secondly, also about legality. It is true that, see, I'm not sure if what DAOs do or what protocols do are against the law. The word I would use is there are no laws there. I think that's more the angle I'm leaning towards, because this system that we are using, be it cryptocurrency in general, or it be something like a DAO, which is used as an establishment to handle human resource, these are new establishments, right? Governments are not familiar with it. So they have not really experienced it, and they have not really made laws for it. So in my mind, or I was reading this book by Balaji, which was released last month. It was called The Network State, right? I think that that may be one of the final iterations of a DAO. And he was saying that DAOs, obviously, in order to have mainstream adoption, they need to have income and real estate footprint, and they need to attain a measure of diplomatic recognition. And the only way an organizational structure will attain diplomatic recognition will be once it grows in size. Like we cannot have 300 DAOs in all of the world and say like governments recognize DAOs, right? We need to have, I don't know, 50,000 or 100,000 DAOs and I don't know, 100 billion in their treasuries. And then governments are probably going to say, oh, this is a big establishment. This is the thing that we need to address. And that, I think, is where the legality and regulations are going to come. So yes, of course, regulations are totally needed for things to happen, for things to work smoothly, for adoption and everything. But the only way regulations will be here, and the only way we'll have recognition of governments, I think, is through explosion of the sphere. Like if people start using it and capital starts pouring into it, then yes, existing establishments takes note of it. So yeah, I just wanted to touch upon those two things. About the ecosystem, like I said, we track 5,000 DAOs over Ethereum, Solana, and substrates. And there are 4 million governance token holders, like 4 million people who can potentially vote in these thousands of DAOs across these three spheres. And as of today, they manage around 10.3 billion in assets. But the footprint of DAOs is much larger. When I say DAO treasury, I only mean that like the amount that is in direct control of the DAO, but there might be a protocol which has like, I don't know, 200, 300 million, but it is not managed by the DAO. So the footprint is larger, but treasury size is around 10 billion. At the start of 2022, it was actually much larger. It was around 16 to 20 billion, and it came down because of the market conditions and everything. And when I talk about things like this, I remember this reel that you all must have seen. In Instagram, there is this format where I'll give you an example. Like a kid will be there and he'll be like, damn, I should have a bigger pool for my house. And then a flashback will show, and the same guy in a younger self would be asking, oh, really? Do we have a house? So I think right now I'm saying like there are 5,000 DAOs and it manages 10 billion in assets. So 3-4 years back, it would be like, really, there are more than 100 DAOs. So from there, we 10x or 100x in almost all verticals. And when you look at the ecosystem, that's what you see. There has been an all-out growth, even be it treasury, be it the number of organizations, be it even proposals. There has been a lot of growth. Right? At least even in 2021, if you look at it, the treasury of DAOs listed on Deep DAO went from 400 million to 16 billion by the end of 2021. And like number of people went from like some 15K to around 1.6 million. So it really exploded that year. And like Martin said, we also see some category-based trends in DAOs. We have categorized around 500 to 600 DAOs. I think it's a work in progress. It's going on every day. And DeFi is like the most popular category. Like the last time I checked, I think 7 out of 10 DAOs were DeFi, and a major proportion of DAOs are also like NFT DAOs. And interestingly, categories like gaming or media and communications are also super active in terms of governance. So like that's my ecosystem overview. Like I can give you a lot more numbers and go into a lot more detail if we had more time, but I don't think we do that. And about adoption, I think we'll have to do a guesstimate, right? Like what do we expect in the next couple of years? I think crypto will like see an influx of like around 1 billion people in the next 5 years. And if that's what we are expecting, there are only around 4 million people in DAOs right now, right? So that's less than what 0.4% of the people that we are expecting to use crypto. So I think it's really low, and I think it's going to explode again. And when it explodes again, it's going to be a much more significant deal, because when the number of organizations go from 5,000 to 50,000, it's not as similar to it going from 500 to 5,000, right? So we expect a lot of growth. And personally, I think the future will have to be a game of optimization, because like Martin said, DAOs are not very light on their feet. It takes a lot of time to achieve consensus. And when we compare it to organizations like startup and all, they're not really fast in terms of putting out a product and making changes and everything. And there's also a lot of noise. So all these things need to be optimized for. But yes, we do expect growth. So that's my 2 cents. Sorry for giving a long answer.
Thank you, Aman, for answering the question. Hopefully, you'll be able to stay with us for a couple of more minutes, since we want to really hear a bit more from you. So don't run away from us. And yeah, Alex, let's hear your thoughts. I know you have something to say regarding all of this. How do you see the DAO ecosystem overall right now, and where do you see it in the future, in the near to kind of short to mid term?
I'm really optimistic in these terms, like when it comes to the future right now. Yeah, like, everybody says maybe DAOs don't really have yet the structure that allows them to operate efficiently, right? And it takes time to figure out as well, because, it all started with an idea of unify, like universal accessible democracy, something like that, right? Where everybody can participate, everybody can contribute, and everybody has actually to contribute. And that in the end of the day resulted, in basically majority of votes in many DAOs being like, let's lower the quorum for our decisions because otherwise we can't even make them. So I guess DAOs will evolve and we will see a lot of different approaches to the governance in the first place, exactly to fight that, because the need to have an organization will not go anywhere, right? Like I said in the beginning, it's a very natural thing. We all want to have it. We need to have that. But one of the reasons, I guess, why it's not why the participation is not as high as we'd want it to be is exactly like, this reason. It's really hard. It's really hard to influence the decision. It's really hard to participate in each and every vote, and so on and so on. So people just get exhausted. There is even this term governance fatigue. And yeah, even to that point of democracies in the real world, yes, people will vote once every 5-6 years, and governments have to invest heavily into actually advertising those votings, right? They need to basically make people come and vote, because otherwise they also will not hit those quorum thresholds, and the vote will not pass at all. So that's a big problem that exists in the real world, and we just took it and transferred into Web3 space, and it didn't really work out anyway. So we'll have a much more different flavors of DAOs, certainly. And as we progress, I guess, in this direction, so in terms of governance and operational efficiency and everything else, we will also see much more activity from DAOs in different areas. What happened with Constitution DAO? Okay, it may have failed, but it was a great example in this regards, right? So DAO taking their activity outside of traditional, let's say, Web3 space, and trying to influence something happening in the real world. And that will happen a lot because DAOs can help us actually be much more efficient, and that's what is exciting for me. Because real world organizations, real world deals, and everything else is so overwhelmed as well with bureaucracy and processes that are just not efficient. Where I know you have to go to some other place in order to actually sign the papers that you support some decision of your venture fund, for example, right? That's just not how the world should run in 2022. So I guess DAOs can actually improve a lot from that part, and then we'll see the explosion also in terms of what DAOs can achieve. We'll definitely see more examples where they acquire, for example, incumbent organizations, traditional ones. In the real world, they acquire each other, they grow in terms of treasury, and they grow in terms of activity, in terms of structure, spawning sub-DAOs, committees, and so on that have their goal, that have a very precise mandate, and that can execute that very efficiently, very fast, much better than Web2 or even general real world companies. So that's definitely going to happen. I don't have any doubts about that. The only question, I guess, it's not even that much about the technology, right? Because tech is there. Honestly, it's more about the community being ready to adapt and experiment more with different models, right? And obviously, taking a bigger responsibility and more activity in these terms. So yeah.
Thank you, Alex, for sharing your thoughts. And now, we have to ask you, Aman, I'm gonna put you in the spotlight again. What are the plans for the end of our call? What are the future plans for Deep DAO? Since I'm sure you guys are working on some amazing things, your API and everything else behind the closed curtains. What is Deep DAO working on, and how can people learn more about it? And most important, how can people reach out to you and Deep DAO if they want to connect with you?
Hey, great question. Yeah, thanks for asking that. Yes, we are working on some new interesting products, like all of us are at this time. It's the time to build amazing products. So the API is actually not in closed curtains at the moment. We made it live, so you can get access to it right now if you wanted to. And if I'm talking about a mission, I would say one of the biggest things that we want to do is the data that we have, we believe is very useful, be it for tools or for DAOs or for anybody building in space, because it shows you gaps in the system and it shows you what needs to be improved. It tells you a lot about people and organizations, and this is how we make improvements in the system, right? So it is our biggest priority and one of our main missions to make this data available to everyone. So the API is definitely in the spotlight. There are over 30 endpoints, which gets you like as much analysis you want about the DAO ecosystem. We're also working on a piece of software called Brainstorm. This is actually a discussion tool. You might get different answers about what Brainstorm is based on who you ask, but like when people ask me what it is, I tell them that it's like a token gated Reddit. Especially since Deep DAO already has information about all this DAOs and all these people are there. We are now thinking of supporting discussions on each DAO's profile. For example, if you are a member of the Uniswap DAO and you hold Uni tokens, you'd be able to come to Deep DAO and use their Brainstorm to brainstorm on Uniswap. This is in beta testing right at the moment. It will soon be opened. So yeah, some of these interesting things are coming out very soon. So these are exciting times.
Thank you, Aman, for sharing that with us. I'm sure you guys are going to make an amazing thing for the entire ecosystem and allow people to kind of just build upon that. And yeah, last thing, please, how can people reach out to Deep DAO if they want to use your API, if they want to do something with you guys?
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, forgot that. Our Discord, obviously, like, please, check out the Discord and you can drop a message in any of those channels, or all communications channels work. Like some are faster than others. Discord, I think, is the fastest. You can also mail us or, DM us on Twitter. Everything works for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's always hard to reach to the people that are building so hard, and their DMs are definitely swamped, same as Alex and Martin, and I'm sure it's not different for you too. Aman, thank you for joining us on this space call. It was a pleasure having you and hearing your thoughts and sharing what Deep DAO does and how it will develop in the future.
Likewise, I really thank you for this opportunity, and it was a pleasure hearing Martin and Alex and everybody else speak. It was awesome. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Alex, Martin, do you have any final words that you'd like to share?
I do have actually. My final words for everyone who is listening this is to join a DAO, and if they never been part of it, of such an organization, just to experiment, because it's very important people to educate themselves and learn new stuff, because this will bring to more adoption, to more building. So this is kind of something I want to encourage people to try stuff out, stuff that they might see crazy or stupid or whatever, but if it's something new that you never tried, like maybe a DeFi protocol, or you never hold to any NFTs, you just buy one, try out something, because that will lead to the next thing. So this is my kind of message.
Alex, would you share to care your final words?
I can only double down on what Martin said, because I really agree, and I think that's the most important thing, really, among all others. So trying out, interacting with all those applications that are out there, and with those things that can be done on chain is super important in order to create your own. That's like the biggest part of do your own research, right? Which is so important in crypto in general. So do it. Yeah, absolutely, Martin. You speak golf.
Yeah, and I mean, what's the better place to start than Deep DAO and Unique Venture Clubs? Explore the DAOs, see what kind of DAOs you like, see what you're actually interested in, join a few DAOs, open a venture club on Unique Venture Clubs, see how the proposals work, how everything's on chain, how things are done from behind the scenes of that. Be a founder, be a member, just kind of explore, and maybe you'll find something that you actually really like, and who knows, maybe you'll dedicate a good amount of your time towards developing that. You never know what future brings. Guys, thank you so much. We went a bit overboard with time, but it was an interesting discussion, and this brings us to the end of our episode Investing with Friends. Thank you all for joining us, for speaking, for getting a bit philosophical on that part, but that's what counts. We want to hear that type of opinion, and we want to have a fun space call. Thank you guys once again for joining, and have a nice day.